Hi, welcome to this channel. I want you to be rich. Today, we're going to talk about Federal Reserve, inflation, and how rate hikes can affect your investment. My name is Lee. I talk about money, personal investment, and money. Stay tuned. If you're new to investing or you have been investing for a while and this time you're hearing a lot of news and noise on the mass media about inflation and how Federal Reserve is going to rate hikes and how there is an impending recession, in this video, I'm going to explain to you what's the relationship between Federal Reserve rising their rates, your investment, and how it affects the whole economy in very easy to understand examples, so that even if you don't have an economics background or finance, you could easily make decisions for yourself and see what you can do to reduce the impact. So this is not just a technical analysis, but something that can really help you understand what are some of the things I did for myself and what are some of the possible options that you can take. So first of all, let's dive into inflation. So you will hear that inflation is on the rise, and what is inflation? So inflation, in very simple layman term, is the increase of cost of goods and services. So you realize that you're paying more for your Starbucks coffee, you're paying more for your groceries, your gas and utility prices are going up. Basically, generally, it means that your money, your dollar that you takes out is losing buying power over time, and you need more dollars to buy the same cup of coffee. So you might be buying a latte with milk for like $5, and now you need to pay $6.50. And that is because wages are going up, and wages are going up because the workers have to pay more for, say, mortgage, cars, and stuff. So it is a vicious cycle where one person is paying more, they are asking for higher salary, and higher cost of goods lead to higher cost of goods and services. So that is inflation. But why is inflation so scary to the Federal Reserve? Why is inflation seen as the monster? And why is inflation need to be fought? Why can't we just let inflation go up? So currently, after the stimulus given out for the pandemic, we're seeing an inflation of about 7%. And this is the fastest increase of inflation since 1982. So if you look at economic history. And we're so scared of inflation because inflation causes people to lose money. So basically their money is worthless. And we've seen very drastic example in Germany after World War II. Inflation was so bad that people are using the Deutsche Mark, the currency, as waste paper. There's a joke that they rather rob the basket carrying the currency than the currency itself. And we have seen recent example of Turkey, Venezuela, Argentina. Basically, the government were toppled. They couldn't pay their overseas debt that was denominated in dollars. So inflation has a very bad reputation if it goes beyond a certain percentage. And inflation has a reputation for destabilizing economy, also destabilizing government, mainly because people from middle class, lower class are no longer able to buy their day-to-day goods. They're no longer able to eat, commute, or do their day-to-day tasks. So it's a monster. And at 7% after the post-stimulus package, it's very scary. And why is there inflation now in America? Is because we've been paying out so much money to people who are not working. During the pandemic, our Federal Reserve and government has been printing so much US dollars just to fend off a COVID pandemic type of recession. So we're seeing the fastest increase in inflation. So why am I talking about this? Is because Federal Reserve Chairman Powell says that rate hikes, tighter policy will be needed to control inflation. And why is this scary? This is scary because in 1970s, when Paul Volcker was Federal Reserve, he had double-digit rate high, and that bring forth a major recession. So we had the oil crisis, major recession. It's very scary when the delicate balance between increasing interest rate and controlling inflation is not met. So you need to have healthy amount of inflation, 1 to 2%, 1 to 3%. You don't want inflation to go up to 7%, but you don't want to hike your rates so much that you go into recession. And some of you are asking me, what is a rate hike? What do you mean by a rate hike? What are you talking about, a quarter point? So let's talk about the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is set up so that they can be a stabilizing force in the economy, and the Federal Reserve have two obligations or two objectives. Number one is to maximize employment like what we have now. So to bring unemployment down to a very acceptable level. There will always be unemployment, but to maximize employment for every American. And then to stabilize inflation. So we don't want something like Venezuela, we don't want something like Germany. So we want like inflation 1 to 2%, 3%. We don't want 7%. So when there is a 7%, the Federal Reserve control inflation by selling money to banks. So banks get their money from Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve prints money and then send it to the bank. And they make money a lot more expensive by saying that I'm going to sell money to you at this rate. So when they say they hike rates by a quarter point, that means they're going to sell money to the banks more expensive. So what does it have to do with you? And I'm going to explain it to you in a very simple term. So for example, if you're paying a mortgage, you're paying the bank a certain amount of money every month to pay off your house that you bought, and you borrowed money from the bank. So when Federal Reserve rate hikes, the cost of money goes up. So imagine money is something that you're buying. And so instead of paying $600 a month to the bank for your mortgage, you're paying $700. So you have $100 less to spend every month. So you feel that you have less disposable income. You stop buying your Starbucks coffee, you stop shopping so much, you stop eating out so much, because you are now spending more money on your gas, you're spending more money on electricity, you're spending more money on your mortgage. And if mortgage goes up, rent goes up because landlord has to pay the bank. And so the rent goes up. So if you're paying more money for your rent, you're going to spend less going out to eat, considering if your salary remains more or less the same and you can catch up in inflation. And so when such thing overall comes together, we're all spending less money going out. Restaurants get less money and they start ordering less. So people who are in agriculture start selling less. So basically it's a vicious cycle. Everything goes down. It not necessarily has to be so, but if the rate hike is too drastic, that's what is going to happen. So everybody started spending less and we go into a recession. So imagine money is like blood for a body. It's like air. You need air and a good amount of blood to run the body and to make sure that it's running. But when there's too much of it, it's not good. It's like sugar. And so we don't want something like what Paul Volcker did in 1970, where a drastic amount of rate change causes a recession. But there is also an interesting thing that people are saying. They say that the government never wants to be the one putting a rate high because you're very unpopular, you're making everything more expensive. The borrowing has to stop, credit card and lending has to stop. So instead of borrowing money at 1%, you now have to borrow money at 5%. Then you don't borrow the money, you don't start the business. There's a lot of implication. And so when is the midterm election? When is the election for the next politician to go up? When is Senate meeting again? When is the next president going to get elected? Has a lot to do with inflation, even though it's not supposed to. But because the current president wants to remain popular, so when midterm election is not here yet, the rate hikes is not going to happen. Some people said, I'm not sure. Jamie Dimon, a leading CEO of JP Morgan, said that we're expecting 6 to 7 times rate hike in 2022. So will the rate hike be a good balance, or will it scare off investors and cause U.S. economy to go down into recession? And how does it affect your investment? Is that, for example, if you bought into a share of stocks that have bonds payable and they owe money to people, they have a lot of debt, then they will be paying a lot of interest to people who lend them money. And if they're not a company with a lot of money, it's going to affect how much debt servicing interest they're gonna pay. And if you're like Apple, you have $2 trillion of cash, then you don't have so much to be afraid of. But let's say if you invested in Apple starts selling less iPhone, less people upgrade to their iPhones because iPhone become more expensive, people have less money to spend, they subscribing to iCloud, so then business goes down overall and shares goes down. So whether or not inflation affects the share market depends on how much it's, the rate hikes are, and how often, and what are the expectations of the market. So tell me what you think about inflation. And if you look at historical inflation and how rate hikes affects that, it all depends on the delicate balance. So if too much of it goes in, it shocks the market, we go into recession. And believe it or not, the market S&P 500, NASDAQ Composite, the Dow Jones have been going up crazy for the past 10 years since our subprime recession, the last recession. So our market has been overheated for a long time. Is it due for a recession? And will the election, midterm election, as well as the next election be affecting whether there will be a rate hike? And if there is no rate hike, what are we going to do about the 7% inflation that is going to hurt the economy? So let's see what's going to happen. I'm going to include below some of the Federal Reserve announcement, and so you can understand what's a rate hike. Thank you for watching this channel. If you like what I just said, or in an educational way, please subscribe and like. It really improves the algorithm for me. Thank you for watching.